Okay, now we're talking about adverb clauses of contrast. An adverb clause of contrast adds unexpected, surprising, or contrasting information to a main clause. Contrasting means different in some way. So I can say, my grandfather still works, even though he is in his 80s. This is my subordinator, even though. And here is a subordinator, though, which means the same thing. Though cell phones have solved some problems, they have created many others. And you can see where you've got your adverb clause at the beginning of the sentence, you use a comma. If it's after the main clause, there's no comma. Oops, I went backwards. No, I didn't. Okay. Adverb clauses of contrast often begin with the subordinator, although, though, or even though. And these subordinators usually use the meaning of concession or but. Concession means admitting something. Although she's been teaching for 10 years, she still feels nervous at the beginning of the school year. This means that she's been teaching for 10 years, but she still feels nervous at the beginning of the school year. Though she said she wanted to help, she didn't do anything. And this means the same thing as she said she wanted to help, but she didn't do anything. He wouldn't eat anything even though he was hungry. This means he was hungry, but he wouldn't eat anything. And although, though, and even though are all similar in meaning, however, although is more formal, even though expresses a stronger contrast or emphasis. I wouldn't really worry too much about those differences, however. And here's section C. We can also use while to introduce an adverb of contrast. When we use while to contrast two aspects of the same thing, it usually includes a meaning of concession or but. So while smokeless tobacco may be safer than cigarettes, it is not safe enough. This means smokeless tobacco may be safer than cigarettes, but it is not safe enough. Now, while has another meaning that we've talked about. So when I say something like, I like to watch TV while I am doing my homework. This is a different kind of sentence, although it's also an adverb clause with while. While has those two different meanings. While a college education is useful, it doesn't guarantee a job after graduation. This means education is useful, but it doesn't guarantee a job. With this use of while, the adverb clause usually comes before the main clause, but I wouldn't worry about that very much. We can also use while to make a direct contrast between two different things. With this use of while, the adverb clause usually comes after the main clause. Hawaii is warm while Alaska is cold. My mother was an artist and very high-strung. High-strung means you get excited very easily or you get upset very easily. While my father was quite calm. My mother was an artist and very high-strung, while my father was quite calm. And here's section D. And here are some other ways to show contrast. We can also put an independent clause plus but plus an independent clause. This is using but, the contraction for fanboys. My grandfather is still in his 80s, but he still works. Okay, here is despite, which is really a preposition. So you add a noun phrase. Despite being hungry, he wouldn't eat anything. And in spite of and despite are the same thing. In spite of his age, he has never worked. Okay. if you want to say these same things with though or even though, you could say here, even though my grandfather is in his 80s, he still works. Even though he was hungry, he wouldn't eat anything. Okay. Even though he is old, he has never worked.